Hey, what's up guys? So in this video we're going to be talking about the Uniden R7, and specifically we're going to go over the different buttons and features, go over how to use the different features on the detector, and then we're going to dive into the different menu options and settings and go over how to configure the detector to customize it the way you want, optimize the performance, and help cut down on false alerts. Now this video, it's eventually actually going to go out of date. Uniden is going to continue to update the detector and add new features and change things, and so on my website I'm also going to have a tutorial that's already available. I'll have the link in the video description, and if you're watching this video and you find, hey, you know, there's some settings that are available in my detector that are not discussed here in the video, take a look at the article on my website. That I can update really easily as things change, new firmware updates come out, everything like that, whereas this video I'd have to shoot the entire thing from scratch. So when new stuff comes out, or if you would just prefer reading over everything instead of watching a video, this is probably going to be fairly lengthy, you can just go to the article down in the video description. Speaking of the video description, I'll also go back and mark the different times where I talk about all the different topics. So if there's something in particular that you want to learn about, just go down to the video description and you can skip directly to whatever topic it is that you want to learn more about. Now, another note about the article on my website, at the very end of the article, you're going to find my general recommended settings for most people. It's kind of a good starting point if you're wondering how to program your detector, so you can look over those and then you can start customizing it a little bit further based on what's appropriate for your area or your personal preferences. And you'll also find down there, I'm going to go over the settings that I personally run on my R7 based on where I drive and what I want. This video, it's going to be current as of firmware version 1.22. Again, new firmware updates are going to come out, and I've got tutorials on how to update and all that kind of stuff. You can check on Uniden's website for the latest firmware. Now, if you haven't picked up an R7 and you want one, I'll put a link in the video description to where you can go ahead and pick one up. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump on over to the detector and start getting familiar with it. All right, now first things first, here is our detector. We've got a number of buttons here on top of the detector. We've got our menu button right there. We've got our plus and minus buttons, which are going to allow us to cycle through the menu and adjust the volume. And we also have our power button on the right-hand side. We can press the menu button like this and then cycle through the menu options forwards. We can cycle backwards, and if we press the menu button again, it'll change any of the different options that we want and then cycle all the way back. And then once you've got everything set up, you can just wait for everything to time out, or you can press and hold the menu button and it'll go ahead and exit back to, well, the detector running normally. The power button on the right-hand side, you can press that at any point and then it powers off the detector. I often get it confused and I'm trying to press the menu and I wind up turning the detector off. Now we've got a pair of buttons here on this side of the detector as well. On the left-hand side, we've got our mark button. On the right side, we have our mute and our dim button. Now starting off with the mute and dim button up front, that's the one that you're probably going to be using more often. Whenever you come across an alert and if you want to manually mute the detector, you just press the mute button on the side. Now if you come across a false alert that you want to lock out, say a speed sign or a grocery store with an automatic door opener, if you don't want the detector to false alert every time you pass it, double press the mute button when you come across that alert and it will go ahead and say mute memory on display, and it'll remember that signal and filter it out for you in the future. Now to change the display brightness, you're going to press and hold that button to get into the dim options. So you'll see it'll switch to bright, and now we can cycle through the different options. There's dim, there's dimmer, there's dark mode, there's display off, and there's automatic brightness. Now bright, dim, and dimmer are pretty self-explanatory. They're fixed brightness levels at all times. Dark mode is basically going to have the display almost completely off with a little blinking dot at the bottom that cycles along the bottom just to let you know that the detector is powered on. And then when you get an alert, the display is going to turn on and it helps to get your attention. And some people actually like it to help maybe reduce any chances of burn-in to have the display off most of the time. Now if you want the display off altogether and so it never lights up, you can set the display to off. Now auto mode is there to make the display brighter in the daytime and dimmer at night. And there's going to be some menu options that are available to adjust how bright it gets in the daytime and how dark it gets at night. And you do need to have the detector set to auto mode in order to get into those menu options. Now a quick note, I do find that the detector kind of errs to the side of being too dark. It has to be brighter than I would think it should in order for it to switch into bright mode. So for that reason, I do sometimes do the brightness selections manually, but I run auto mode most of the time. Next is the mark button. If we press that, you'll see it says user mark log, and it's pretty much saved this location so that every time you come by this area again, it will remind you. It's useful for if there's a place where the police commonly run a speed trap, the detector can notify you every time you approach this area. Personally, I never use this feature, and so something that I like is kind of a second feature where you can just clear all of the user marks in case you create one by accident and you don't want to have to wait until you come by next time to go in and delete it. The way that that works is you can just press and hold the mark button like this, and then on the display, it'll go ahead and say delete all user points. And then you can press the mark button again, and it's going to go ahead and clear all of your user marks. Now, if you don't necessarily want to clear all of your user marks, you can actually press the mark button again and delete just this one alert if you don't want to clear all of them. But speaking of kind of cool tricks as far as pressing and holding buttons, the menu button is another one. You'll notice if I press and hold the menu button like this, it'll switch into highway mode, city mode, and advanced mode. It's a quick and easy way to go in and change the sensitivity level of your detector. Now, speaking of sensitivity levels, let's actually go ahead and start diving into the detector's options itself and learn more about how to configure it and how to use it. So now we'll press the menu button, and then we can press the button again to cycle through the different options. So there's highway, city, and advanced mode. Now, these are going to give us the ability to adjust the sensitivity of the detector. With advanced mode, as you can see, we can go in and actually individually adjust the sensitivity of X-band, K-band, and Ka-band. That's all that advanced mode does. It doesn't activate any other advanced features. It's just individual control of the 3 different bands. We've also got highway, which is going to be full sensitivity on all bands at all times. And then we also have city mode, which is going to dial K-band sensitivity back quite a bit. You'll notice if we go to advanced mode, we have the ability to control K-band sensitivity to a bunch of different levels. We can go all the way down to 30%. However, if you want to go even farther than that, you can go into city mode, and that's going to back it down something to like 10%, maybe 18%. I've seen a couple numbers, but it's pretty much heavily reducing K-band sensitivity. As the name implies, this can be very helpful in the city just to help really calm down false alerts. This will, of course, affect legitimate police radar and reduce your range. In testing, we do find that the detector is really sensitive, and so you can still use it in instances where maybe the terrain is pretty favorable, straightaways, flat terrain, that kind of stuff, and you can still get enough range to save yourself from a ticket. But it really does cut down the range, and if things get tougher, that could be an issue. So I like using it because I know it's almost all false alerts here. There's little to no legitimate K-band, so that can be a useful feature. But if there's a lot of K-band, maybe you'd want to experiment with different levels of K-band sensitivity using the advanced mode instead. If you're curious where to start, maybe around 50 or 60%, that's probably a good starting point. But again, you can go and kind of dial it in as you drive, maybe crank down the sensitivity to cut out more false alerts, or crank it up if you want longer range. Now, the next option is GPS, which you can turn on and off, and it's basically going to allow you to enable or disable all of the GPS-based features in the detector, and there's quite a bit of them. I would recommend leaving it on. Now we've got, speaking of GPS, we can have alerts to speed cameras as well as red light cameras. Now this is separate from radar or laser-based alerts. This is actually a GPS database that you can download to your computer from Uniden's website, and it's updatable periodically, and the detector will notify you as you approach any speed cameras or red light cameras in the area. Next, we've got our red light camera quiet ride, which is kind of like high-speed muting for red light cameras. The idea here is, let's say you're driving on the highway. Red light cameras are on the city streets and the surface streets, right? But sometimes there'll be a red light camera right next to the highway, and you'll get the red light camera alert as you're passing it, but you're driving on the highway. So what you can do is you can set red light camera quiet ride and say, if I'm driving over this speed, because I'm most likely on the highway, go ahead and just mute the red light camera alerts. Don't notify me because I'm on the highway. And you can go in and adjust the speed thresholds for where you want it to be muted if you're traveling above this speed. Next is the voice option. Voice on. Now if you turn this on, it's going to beep. KA frequency, voice off. KA frequency, voice on. And also speak the different menu options. Now I like it off in general just to keep it a little bit quieter. Now, the primary purpose of the voice option is to do things like announcing the band, so announcing K-band or Ka-band. I personally just listen to the audio alerts, the sounds, and the ramp up. I don't listen to Ka-band, but I think it's a useful feature, especially as you're starting out, to quickly and easily identify what radar band is being used. Ka-band. Now, another thing is with the R7, it's got the arrows. It can actually announce the direction of the signal, ahead, sideways, or back behind you. If you enable the voice option, it not only announces the band, but it also announces the direction. There's one voice option for both, well, the band announcements and the directional announcements. Front, Ka-band. Now for frequency, there's another option which we just saw. For Ka-band, there's the option to announce the frequency itself, so 33.802 for example. You can turn that on and off as you like. This can be useful for maybe announcing the frequency for yourself, or even having it in your dash cam footage for reference, which is kind of nice. Now the next option, we've got the ability to individually turn our entire bands on and off. So X-band, K-band, and Ka-band. X-band, it's really only actively in use in like Ohio and New Jersey, so a lot of people like to turn it off. K-band and Ka-band, though, are used almost everywhere across the country. Some people may like to turn off K-band if it's not in use at all, just to help, well, really quiet down the detector. But for most people, you'll want to have K-band and Ka-band turned on. X-band you can turn off. It's Ohio and New Jersey, I believe northern or southern New Jersey, I forget which off the top of my head, I'll just put it at the bottom of the screen, where it's actively in use, and maybe a few other rural places around the country, but in most of the country, X-band has been phased out. We also have the ability to alert to laser or not. Laser detection, it's not super useful with the R7, and it's not the most sensitive laser detector ever. Waze and laser jammers are better tools for this, but you do have the option of turning it on and off if you like. Next is going to be pop detection. So we've got K-band pop, and we also have Ka-band pop. Let's talk about those. Now, pop, it's a form of really, really fast radar, 67 milliseconds, designed to allow officers to preview the speed of a moving vehicle without necessarily alerting the driver if they're running a radar detector. There's a number of issues as far as accuracy. It's not allowed to be used in court by itself to issue speeding tickets. They have to switch over to normal radar. Now, the R7 has the ability to alert to both K-band and Ka-band pop. Now, it's not something that's really actively used all that much, and for most people, generally recommend leaving it off for better performance and also fewer false alerts. You're going to see some false alerts on pop, but if you want the ability to detect pop radar, you have it for both K-band and Ka-band. The K-band, it's not 16 millisecond, it's a 67 millisecond pop. Ka-band, of course, 67 as well. Next is MRCD. You can turn it on or off. Now, MRCD, it's the multi-radar. There's the MRCD and CT, which is in use in Europe. It's where it originated. It's showing up in Canada, and now it's actually starting to show up in several states and several cities here in the US. It is a difficult to detect, lower-powered radar gun, and you do need a detector specifically designed to detect the MRCD or the MRCT in order to detect it. With the R7, if you have it in use in your area, and I'll put the locations up on screen, you can turn it on, and it will, well, notify you as you're approaching MRCDs. If it's not in use in your area, I would recommend leaving it turned off because you are going to get false alerts with it turned on otherwise. And so to cut down on false alerts, I'd recommend leaving it turned off. And if it starts to show up in your area, you can always just go in and turn it on as needed. Next is the K-band filter to help filter out blind spot falses. I would recommend leaving it turned on. It's not going to be able to filter out all of them, of course, and no detector can do that, but it is a useful feature to have enabled, and most people are going to want that. Ka-band filter. So this is another option to help filter out false alerts on Ka-band. Now, as you're driving around, you may see some falses on Ka-band. I have, and so I've turned it on, but you can turn it off if you want maximum performance on Ka-band. I haven't seen any tests yet with the R7 with the Ka filter on and off, but looking back at the R1 and the R3, I believe it had a pretty minimal effect. I think it did, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So you can run it turned off, but if you start seeing false alerts on Ka-band, just turn it on, and it will help cut down on those false alerts for you. Next is TSF, which is the traffic sensor filter. Now, in many places around the country on the highways, they have these K-band traffic sensors that periodically blast K-band and cause, well, your radar detectors to false alert as they're trying to measure traffic and that kind of stuff. If you have traffic sensors in your area and you keep seeing these repeated blasts of K-band on the highway, separate from BSMs, you can turn it on and it will help filter those out. Now, something that we've noticed just starting with the experimentation with the detector, it doesn't look like it adds any delay the way we've seen with maybe other implementations of TSF. And so you can turn it on. I haven't seen any performance penalties yet with TSF, and so you can turn it on, and I've noticed it does seem to help with cutting down on some of the blind spot falses. So nice benefit there. Now, next up is the K-block feature. This is really nice. It's essentially your filter for Hondas and Acuras. You'll notice it's designed to filter out signals 24.199 plus minus 5 megahertz. Now, this is the frequency range where you'll typically see false alerts from, well, blind spot falses from Hondas and Acuras, and there's a ton of them. Without this filter, you're going to get a ton of false alerts. With it, well, it's going to really quiet down the detector. Now, the way the filter, I believe, is supposed to work, it's just a notch to, say, filter out any signals within this frequency range, legitimate or false. However, what we're seeing so far with this implementation is sometimes there are punch-throughs from BSMs that happen, maybe depending on the settings or if it gets close. And we've also seen people who had legitimate police encounters, and even with the filter enabled, the detector's still alerted. So we don't know if it's a bug with the implementation of the filter, if there's something maybe more sophisticated going on with continuous wave versus frequency modulated radar. Is there something going on with the different settings? Like, is it with MRCD on or off? So we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on and how this works. I've asked Uniden, and when we get more information, I can post it up on the website. But the idea is it's supposed to filter out Hondas and Acuras, and it does work, well, very well in that regard. It's really helpful. Next is K-narrow. and Ka-band, well, narrow, segmentation, and wide. So the idea here is let's start with our K-band kind of segmentation options. We can either do K-narrow or we can do K-wide. Now at K-wide, you can have the detector sweep all of the available K-band frequencies that it's capable of sweeping. And with the R7, they've actually widened it relative to the R1 and the R7 to reach down and get some lower K-band frequencies. If you like, you can actually run K-band narrow, and it goes to, well, a more narrow range of frequencies and kind of cuts out sort of the lower end and a little bit on the top end too. And it's one of those things where if maybe you don't have a lot of K-band in use in your area, you can do that to help kind of filter out any K-band that's on the farther edges of the entire K-band frequency range. However, if K-band is actively in use in your area, it's probably for the best to run K-band wide to make sure that you can detect all of the K-band frequencies that police officers are capable of using. Now, Ka-band, it's similar, but a little bit different. We've got some more options here. You've got Ka-band wide, which is going to sweep all of the range of frequencies that the detector is capable of sweeping, 33.4 to 35.7, not up to 36 gigahertz, which is a little bit weird. I'll explain that in just a second. Then there's Ka-band narrow, which is pretty much like segments 258. It's just those, so if you want to just set it up for 258, you can run Ka-band narrow, and I kind of like that option sometimes because it makes the menu smaller. You don't have all of the Ka-band segments there, so it's just quicker to go through the menu options. Now, if you'd like complete control over which segments are being scanned for with the R7, you can set it to Ka-band segmentation. Now, when you do this, you're going to see there's a number of new options that are available. We've got our different segments. So we've got segment 1, 2, all the way up. Let's see, segment 5. You can scan for, out of tune stalkers. It's segments 4 and 6. There's your 35.5 scan. There's segment 9, and you'll notice here, there is no segment 10. Segment 10 is gone from the R7. Now, remember how I mentioned that the K-band frequency range that it can scan for has been widened to get the lower frequency range relative to the R1 and the R3? Well, what they did is they kind of took away the higher end Ka-band, that segment 10, where you'll almost never see any legitimate radar above 35.6 or so. And so they took that away and gave it to K-band, and that's why there's no segment 10. A lot of people wonder, like, is there something wrong with my detector? Is it a bug? Whatever. It's not a bug. They just took it away to make the K-band frequency range wider. Now, for those of you guys wondering a little bit more about Ka-band segmentation, basically you're just selectively choosing what frequency ranges it scans for, which can improve the performance of the detector, so it's not wasting time scanning for unnecessary frequencies. It opens up a whole can of worms, people wondering about what are the best segments based on where I drive and all that kind of stuff. I'll drop another link in the video description that goes over which segments you need depending on what state you're in and where you drive, so nice shortcut for you there. And that's just based on user information, what frequencies people are seeing and reporting in their area, and what radar guns cops are using, if there's out-of-tune guns, all that kind of stuff. So discuss that all the time. Link in the video description to see what segments you need. If you're not really familiar with what you should program and why, you can just do that. Next, we've got Ka priority and signal priority. This is basically our alert priority. This is basically going to tell our detector how to respond if we have maybe multiple signals. Which one is going to be given the primary priority. It's going to be displayed on screen, and you're going to be hearing that audio ramp up and ramp down with the audio. Now, the classic example is, let's say you have a weak Ka-band signal in the distance, and then you have a stronger K-band signal closer to you. Which one would you want the detector to alert you to as the primary signal? Well, if you're saying, well, most likely I think the K-band signal that's close is going to be a speed sign that I'm passing, but I really want to know about that officer in the distance running Ka-band, you can say I want it to prioritize based on band. So like laser has higher priority over any of the radar detector alerts, Ka-band, then K-band, then X-band. I forget exactly where MRCD is, so I'll just pop that on screen too as far as the alert priority. And it's basically saying if I'm seeing multiple signals, alert me to the highest priority band or laser alert. Now, signal priority is going to alert you to the strongest signal independent of band. Now, this can be useful if you know that maybe officers commonly run K-band in your area, and I want to know if there's a really strong K-band signal here, there's a good chance it's a police officer. And I understand there's maybe another officer in the distance running Ka-band, but I want to be alerted to the strongest and usually closest source, even if it's maybe K-band, which is more likely to be a false alert. So if you want the priority to be based on signal strength, choose signal priority. If you want the priority to be based on radar band, then you choose Ka priority, which maybe should be called band priority, but it's called in the menu Ka priority. Next, we've got our GPS lockout stuff. So we can have GPS lockouts work only for X-band and K-band, or We can also have lockouts be working for Ka band. Now, in general, it's recommended to run it only with X band and K band. Locking out Ka band can be very risky because Ka band is almost always legitimate, and so it's a bad idea to go around locking out Ka band, but you do have the option here, which can be helpful for those of you guys who have maybe Ka band speed signs in your area. You can enable this option, and then when you come across it, you can double press the mute button to lock out the Ka band speed sign. But if they're not in use in your area, I would definitely recommend leaving it set to just X band and K band, which is how I run it here. That way you don't maybe inadvertently lock out Ka band. Next up is the all threat display, which you can turn on and off. Now, if we go back to the main screen here, the all threat display is going to be what shows up over here on the left-hand side and replaces your speed or direction or whatever else is going to be here when there's no alert. Now, the idea is when you're detecting multiple signals, it'll display the primary signal on the screen, and then all the secondary signals, including band and direction and everything, will show up on the left-hand side of the display. And those additional signals is there when it's showing all of the threats, hence the name all threat display. So you've got one primary signal and up to 3 additional signals for a total of 4 signals simultaneously. If you turn that off, then it'll always only show the one primary signal, and then the left side of the display will just be staying, speed or altitude or whatever you have set there. Next, we have the ability to adjust the color for our primary display. We can cycle through the different options. So you can see we've got white, violet, blue, amber, which looks a lot like red, green, pink, gray, and back to red. Choose whatever color you like. Maybe matches your vehicle's interior or something. The next one, we have the ability to adjust the arrow color. So if we go into here, you see for each individual band, we can choose what color we want them, just so maybe different bands have different colors for the arrow. So you can choose whatever you like here. We also have the ability to change the band color. So when it says X band or Ka band, you can adjust this. So when it's set to signal like this, you can see we've got a couple different options as far as how we want to configure it. Let's go back to signal real quick. This is pretty much going to be based on the signal strength. And so it may be green at first, and then goes to yellow, and then to red as it gets stronger. We also have the ability to have it match the arrow color, which we'd set in the previous option. Or we can just have it be a fixed color and just have, again, different colors for Ka band or K band or whatever you want on screen. You can do the same thing, of course, for K band or MRCD or Ka band, but I guess not for laser. All right, so moving on to the mode display. So when there's no signals present on screen, you can have it say, highway, advanced, or city. You can also have it display the current time, or you can do the scanning display, which is kind of this Knight Rider-esque display which goes back and forth on screen. Some people like it, some people find it distracting. Choose whatever one you want. Next, we can go over and choose what shows up on the left-hand side of the screen, kind of where it, the all-threat display we talked about, what shows up there. So we can have it display the speed and the compass, kind of nice while you're driving, though it does spin in a circle if you're parked and you haven't started driving yet. You've got just the compass itself. You've got the vehicle voltage, which could be nice for troubleshooting low voltage stuff or whatever. You can display your current altitude, which is kind of fun when you're traveling through the mountains. And you can always go back to speed itself. Next, we have 2 different alert displays, so pretty much adjusting the strength meter of the display. Now, alert display number 1 is going to give you a horizontal series of dots to represent the signal strength. Alert display number 2 is going to be kind of this arc at the top of the screen that also represents the signal strength. And so just whatever style you prefer, you have the option there. Next up is going to be our miles per hour or kilometers per hour, so whatever is appropriate for your distances and speeds and all that. Just choose whatever you want. I kind of like it when I go to Canada, so I got my kilometers per hour there. Now we also have our individual alert tones, so you can customize the sounds for X band, K band, MRCD, Ka, and on New Bogey, I'll get to that one in a second, as well as for laser. Let's go ahead and quickly cycle through all the different options. We also have the ability to get notified when the detector picks up an additional signal, kind of a New Bogey alert tone. And those ones are different alert tones. Let's play those next. So 5 different ones as opposed to the 12 for the radar and laser alerts. We also have auto mute functionality. Now auto mute is going to automatically reduce the volume level of the alert after a couple seconds. So it gets your attention at full volume, and then so it doesn't keep screaming at you, it'll actually dial back the volume. Now you can keep it at max volume if you want, so it makes it really easy to hear on the dash cam footage, but for most people in general, it's nice to have the signal strength automatically dial back. And now we also have the ability to control not only the primary alert volume, something that we can do with the volume up and down buttons here on the top of the detector, but we can also then choose how far down does it drop the alert volume to. So if we go over, you can see here is our auto muted volume level. So we can choose exactly how loud or how quiet it gets once it goes down to the auto mute. Now something to keep in mind is if you enable the auto mute, but you notice it's not actually dropping the volume level, it's possible that your normal alert volume and your auto mute volume level are set to the same level. So make sure that you do have them set differently. Next is going to be our dark mode control. So we can adjust here exactly how bright the detector is when you get an alert. Bright, dim, and dimmer. There is no automatic control for have light up brighter in the daytime and dimmer at night. You choose it manually here. Now the next one here are the auto dim controls. Now this is something that you're going to have to make sure that when you are at the main screen, you do have to have the detector set to automatic display brightness. If we go and have one of these other options, it's not going to show up there in the menu. It'll only show up if we have it set here to auto. So long as you do, you're going to have the auto dim settings here. So we can go into those and we can choose in the daytime, how bright do we want the brightness to be? So we've got a number of different options: bright, dim, dimmer. And then we can also choose when it goes down dimmer. This one we do have more options. So dimmer will be the dimmest option. We can have it go dark. So we just got the scanning dot at the bottom and then it lights up when you get an alert. Or you can have the display turn completely off at night if you like that as well. Bright, maybe not the brightest idea. But you do have the option of when it's dim, how dim you want it to go. Next is going to be quiet ride, which is our low speed muting. This is basically saying when you're driving around new parts of town and you come across any sort of alert, like an automatic door opener or something, the detector will alert you initially and then it will automatically reduce the volume. This is great for, well, keeping the detector extra quiet around town. Now, when you come across stationary false alerts that you want to teach the detector this is a false alert, you can of course double press the mute button, and so the detector will learn that as a false alert. This is going to be helpful because it applies to all of the different alerts, even if it's the first time that you've seen them and you haven't created any of your lockouts yet, you're driving to a new part of town, etc. Next is going to be our limit speed option, and this is pretty much just going to send you a notification if you travel above a preset speed. And so it's just kind of a reminder of like, hey, you're speeding, and you just choose the level that you want, say the speed limit, for example, and it'll notify you if you go over that speed. The next one, we've got our time zone control, so just choose whatever time zone is appropriate for your area. And the same thing with daylight savings time, you can turn it on and off as needed. So if you set your time zone and you notice it's off by an hour, just change this on or off. Next, we've got our battery warning. This is going to alert you if you're running off of your car battery, like your engine's not running, and the voltage drops down too low. You'll just get an audible warning and a visual warning on your detector letting you know that, hey, the battery voltage is starting to drop down too low. Now, another helpful feature is going to be the battery saver. This is going to be useful if you have your radar detector plugged into a power source that's always powered, including when your car is turned off. If that's the case, your radar detector is going to be on and draining your car battery, and if you're not in the car, well, it can drain it too far and you're not going to be able to start your car next time. So the battery saver, it's going to basically turn... Oh, that camera died again. Speaking of battery saving, that one just overheated and shut off. It's going to automatically turn off your car, It's going to automatically turn off your radar detector after, I think it's an hour. I'll put that on screen of when you're parked. And it's a GPS-based feature. It's noticed, you're parked, you're stationary, or maybe there's a little bit of GPS drift or something, 1, 2, 3 miles an hour. So if you're parked for an hour, it'll go ahead and turn off the radar detector for you to ensure that it doesn't drain your car battery, and then you can't start your car up next time. Next up is the self-test, which is pretty much, well, a self-test. Now, that said, all it really does is it just kind of plays like a sample of the different alerts on startup.
X-band, K-band, Ka-band, laser, GPS connected.
It doesn't actually do any self-testing under the hood or behind the scenes as far as I'm aware. I mean, I guess it'll let you know that your speaker's functioning and stuff, but I personally just prefer turning it off to get a quicker and, well, quieter startup. Next is the factory reset. This is pretty much going to reset all of your settings back to factory default, and it's typically recommended to do whenever you update the firmware of your detector, especially if there's any new settings that have been added to the R7. Now, something to note, this doesn't clear your GPS lockouts, and it doesn't clear your manually created GPS user marks. Those are actually going to be in the next menu options. So here, this first option, delete all mute, is for deleting all of your GPS lockouts. So if you created a bunch of GPS lockouts and you want to clear all of your mute memory locations, or what Uniden calls your GPS lockouts, you can clear all of them right there. Additionally, you have the option of deleting all of your manual GPS user marks. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, a nice shortcut to this is just long pressing the mark button on the side of the detector, and it'll also bring up the option to clear all of your manual GPS user marks, but going through the menu is kind of the main way of doing that. Next is the memory quota, and this is something kind of new for the R7. So if you take a look, the R7 actually has the ability to store up to 2,000 points as a combination from GPS lockouts and manual user marks. Now, the way that it works here is it's got 2,000 total, and you can store up to 1,750 of one, and then the remaining, which would be 250 of the other. And you can choose how much you want for either, maybe 1,000 lockouts and 1,000 GPS user marks, or if you're like me and you don't really use the user mark feature, but you use lockouts all the time, you want to devote all of the resources to the lockouts. Again, you can do up to 1,750 of one, and then leaving 250 for the other. And then in the detector, you can actually go in and start adjusting, if you want to give more points to the user marks, or maybe you can go the other way and give more points to the GPS lockouts by using the minus button or the volume down button. So at the bottom in red, that's going to be your current setup, which in my case is 1,750 lockouts. And if I want to give maybe more to the GPS user marks, I can just press the right button. If I want to give more to the lockouts, I press left, and then it's displayed there in white. And then once I have what I want, I press the menu button. It says, do you want to change the quota? And I press it again to say yes. Now the next option in the menu is going to display your current firmware, which in this case, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is firmware 1.22. And then I've got the GPS database, the current version that I have loaded for my Redlight cameras and my speed cameras. That database version is displayed here. And then I have the ability to exit the menu. So there you go. There's a look at all the different menu options for the R7. Now, if you've gone through this and you've got now an understanding of the different features and you're wondering maybe how should you program your detector, again, on my website at the bottom of my setup guide for the R7, I give my kind of general recommended settings that are a good starting point for most people that you can use as a baseline and then customize, change colors, change bands, etc. as you so desire. Other than that, yeah, there you go. There's a run through of the R7. Again, things are going to change. I know, like once the auto lockouts come out, there's going to be new features for that in the menu, and there's going to be new stuff, I'm sure, coming out down the line. So new stuff will be added as always. But yeah, there you go. There's a run through of the R7, how to use it, how to program it, and well, how to optimize it for best performance and cut down on false alerts. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any additional questions. And other than that, happy driving, and I'll see you guys in the next video.